do a little bit of acting, I suppose. This is from Oliver Twist. It's a compilation of a couple of chapters, mainly chapter 22, and I call it The Courtship of Mrs. Corney by Mr. Bumble. I want you to imagine that we're in the workhouse. Mrs. Corney is the matron of the workhouse, and she's having a cup of tea in a winter late afternoon when there's a clang at the workhouse door. Oh, dear me. Is that Mr. Bumble?
At your service, ma'am,
said Mr. Bumble, who was stopping outside to rub his shoes clean and to shake the snow from his coat, and now made his appearance, bearing a cocked hat in one hand and a stick in the other.
Shall I shut the door, ma'am?
The lady modestly hesitated to reply, lest there should be any impropriety in holding an interview with Mr. Bumble with closed doors. Mr. Bumble, taking advantage of her hesitation, and being very cold himself, shut it without permission. Oh, hard weather, Mr. Bumble.
Oh, indeed, ma'am, they try Paul Rodeo weather, Miss Ma'am. We have given away, Mrs. Corney, we have given away a matter of 20 quartern loaves and a cheese and half this very blessed afternoon, and yet them paupers is not contented.
Of course not, Mr. Bumble. When would that be?
That's the way with these people, ma'am. Give them an apron full of coals today, and they'll come back for another day after tomorrow as brazen as alabaster. Mrs. Corney, the great principle of out-the-door relief is to give them paupers exactly what they don't want, and then they gets tired of coming.
Oh dear me, that's a good one too. Mr. Bumble took up his hat and stick as if to go. Oh, you'll have a very cold walk, Mr. Bumble.
It blows, ma'am. Enough to cut one's ears off.
The matron looked from the little kettle to the beadle who was moving towards the door, and as the beadle coughed, preparatory to bidding her good night, bashfully inquired whether he wouldn't take a cup of tea. Mr. Bumble instantaneously turned his collar back again, laid his hat and stick upon a chair, and drew another chair up to the table. As he slowly seated himself, he looked at the lady. Mrs. Corney applied herself to the task of making his tea. Sweet, Mr. Bumble.
Very sweet indeed,
said Mr. Bumble, fixing his eyes on Mrs. Corney as he said this. Oh, you have a very nice cat here, and kittens too, I declare. Oh yes, I'm so fond of them, you can't imagine. They're so happy, so frolicsome, so cheerful. They're quite companions for me.
Very nice animals, ma'am. So very domestic.
Oh yes, and so fond of their home too. But it's quite a pleasure, I'm sure.
Mrs. Corney, ma'am, I mean to say this, ma'am, that any cat or kitty that could live with you and not be fond of its own must be a ass.
Oh, Mr. Bumble.
It's of no use disguising facts, ma'am,
said Mr. Bumble, slowly flourishing his tea with a kind of amorous dignity which made him doubly impressive.
I would drown it myself with pleasure.
Then you're a cruel man, and a very hard-hearted man besides.
Hard-hearted,
What? Mr. Bumble resigned his cup without another word, squeezed Mrs. Corney's little finger as she took it, and inflicting 2 open-handed slabs upon his laced waistcoat, gave a mighty sigh, and hitched his chair a very little morsel farther from the fire. It was a round table. Consequently, Mr. Bumble, moving his chair by little and little, soon began to diminish the distance between himself and the matron, and continuing to travel round the outer edge of the circle, brought his chair in time, close to that in which the matron was seated. Indeed, the 2 chairs touched. And when they did so, Mr. Bumble stopped. Now, if the matron had moved her chair to the left, she would have been scorched by the fire. And if to the right, she must have fallen into Mr. Bumble's arms. So being a discreet matron, and no doubt foreseeing these consequences at a glance, she remained where she was, and handed Mr. Bumble another cup of tea.
Hard-hearted, Mrs. Corney. Are you hard-hearted? Mrs. Corney.
Dear me, what a very curious question from a single man. What can you want to know for, Mr. Bumble? Mr. Bumble drank his tea down to the last drop, finished a piece of toast, whisked the crumbs from his knees, wiped his lips, and deliberately kissed the matron. Mr. Bumble, I shall scream. I'm only a foolish, excitable, weak creature.
Not weak, Mom. Are you a weak creature, Mrs. Goldie?
We're all weak creatures, Mr. Bumble.
So we are. So we are.
Nothing was said on either side for a moment or two afterwards.
This is a very comfortable room, Mom. Another room at this Mom would be a complete thing.
Oh, then it would be too much for one.
But not for 2. Eh, Mrs. Goldie? The board allows you coals, don't they, Mrs. Goldie?
And candles.
Coals, candles, and a house rent-free. Oh, Mrs. Corney, what an angel you are!
The lady was not proof against this burst of feeling and sank into Mr. Bumble's arms. The gentleman, in his agitation, imprinted a passionate kiss upon her chaste nose.
You know that Mr. Slat is worse tonight, my fascinator. He's the master of this establishment. His death will cause a vacancy. That vacancy must be filled up. Oh, Mrs. Corney, what a prospect this opens. What an opportunity for our joining of arts and housekeeping. little word, hey, Mrs. Colby? The one little word. My blessed